Welcome to a presentation with the topic of APA formatting and style. The goal of this is to help to assist you, especially those of you who are novice to this whole process of using APA format. Again, that stands for the American Psychological Association form of formatting and style. This is a type of format that's utilized in the graduate program at Widener University, and this presentation has been adapted from one that's freely available, produced by Purdue University. So everything that you see in the darker green on these slides is information that I've added to the existing PowerPoints. This slide has also been expanded so that you can view the speaker notes that are down the bottom of the PowerPoint slides. Those of you who are familiar with the use of PowerPoint know that as you're producing your PowerPoint slides, you have the ability to add kind of your own notes underneath. Some faculty or individuals like to put citations down there or references for the groups. Sometimes people have an outline that's in the speaker notes just to keep you on task to be sure that you're including all of the content. These speaker notes I have included in the PowerPoint presentation that you'll be seeing because they have additional information and suggestions that are here. So you'll see this as a larger slide consistently as we move forward so that you're able to see the speaker notes. You may see that the size of the slide changes as these slides advance because there's some of the speaker notes are quite long and some are relatively short. So we'll get underway and move to the next the next slide. So what is APA? Again, we talked about it being the American Psychological Association's form of formatting papers. It's used predominantly in nursing. There's a lot, and in the psych literature, a lot of institutions and programs that are from nursing programs use APA format. It is definitely used at Widener University, but you may see some variation in the requirements of the assignment. So for the purposes of this course, we're using full APA format with all of the individual components, but it may be in a course that you encounter in the future. Perhaps you won't have to do an abstract or those types of individual pieces. Now this is an example of when I cut off part of the speaker notes. So when you go back and you look at the APA, this presentation that's posted in shared files in its PowerPoint form, you'll be able to expand and see these individual speaker notes. So this just has an overview to what is APA, and APA has a lot of regulation or suggestion for first content and then in the way the content is presented, and we're going to go through that individually. So when you look at a beginning of APA style, there's a lot of information about kind of how to write, what the language is. Obviously it's English based, and the goal of this is for you to be something called parsimonious, which means you use as few words as possible, but those individual words are right on point and they're very, very clear and concise. They're able to portray without any question exactly what it is that you're trying to say. And that you also should try very hard to use relatively plain language that an individual is, a variety of readers would be able then to pick up your document, your manuscript, and make good sense of it. Couple of main forms of types of APA papers. This is not an exclusive listing. There are other types of papers, but commonly, especially in graduate school, these are the types of papers that you'll encounter. The first is a literature review, and we talked in class about a systematic lit review. So you're going to pull all of those individual references that deal with the question that you have. This is appropriate also to an EBP project like you'll be doing in this course in an N684. So you pull all the individual references that you're going to be looking at, and you pull the information from them. So you read the reference once, and then I encourage you to go back and read again, and this time maybe highlight or I use a red pen and paper. I have to have paper copies of articles when I read them. And I actually circle or underline or make notes in the margins of the paper for exactly what it is that I think is important with that information. And then I go back a third time and reread the information, especially the context that it's in, and begin to paraphrase and incorporate that into my paper. Rarely, again, rarely is it appropriate for you to use direct quotes. The only time I want to see direct quotes in a student paper is when it's information that you cannot paraphrase. For example, if you're describing a genetic makeup or some type of chemical molecule that's in a drug or something that you absolutely can't restate, then that's information that you're going to directly quote. I do not want to see strings of quotes in student papers. That tells me that all you've done is copied and pasted essentially from the paper, and there's not been a lot of learning. So when you're doing this literature review, the literature review kind of only needs to have a limited amount of APA format. You don't need to have kind of the full APA format. So you're talking about a title page, the introduction, the body of the paper, which isn't included in this description, and then the list of references. On the other hand, if you're actually publishing a report on research that you've conducted, it's going to have a lot more parts to it, parts to, if you will, the body of the paper. Again, you've got a title page, and in this instance, you're going to have an abstract, and the abstract is a summary of the page. You're going to have an introduction because you know that when you begin writing, you introduce the topic. The body of the paper carries the main portion of what it is that you're trying to say, and then at the very end you're going to have some type of a summary or a conclusion. In the body of the paper, in an experimental report, you're going to have the experimental design. So what method did you use? What actual statistical results were obtained? You're going to discuss those results for their appropriate use within the clinical setting, and then provide your references. And then additionally, any appendices that you would need to include, and then tables and figures. When you do your EBP report, your final project paper, you're going to include tables of your evidence findings, summaries of your evidence in a table format, and you're going to include a figure, at least one figure, which is a summary, a visual summary of your literature search. So I'll be showing you how to do both of those as we move forward. General format is here, and this is pretty important. This is content that you'll definitely be using, so it needs to be typed. It's not a handwritten report. It needs to be double spaced, and you're going to need to look in your word processor and see how to set this up. For example, in Microsoft Word, this is under just the main format tab at the top of the page, and you can set the spacing to single, double, triple, whatever the requirement is. In this instance, it's going to be double spaced. You put one space after a period, so you end a sentence, there's a period, there's a space, and you immediately begin the next sentence. It's printed on standardized paper, so regular paper as far as 8.5 times 11. You use a 1-inch margin, top, bottom, and on both sides. 10 to 12 point font, so it's that specific size of the typing, and the type of font that's used is Times New Roman. You need to have an in-page header in the upper left hand of every single page, and that's called the running head, and we'll talk about it. And then on the upper right will be where your page number is, and every single page that's part of your paper is numbered. So there's 4 major kind of parts to the paper that you'll be producing, and these have all 4 of those. You start with the title page and then move to the abstract. So page 2 is the abstract, and it only contains the abstract. The actual text or body of the paper begins on page 3 and extends for as long as you're going to have it go. And then at the end of the body, after you've included a conclusion, you're going to begin with your reference listing. And we're going to talk about all 4 of these major sections of format individually. Now, this PowerPoint presentation has 34 slides. There are 14 slides that are in the main body portion of this discussion that deal with in-text citations, the citations that you're going to use within the actual discussion of the paper. that lead the reader back to the reference listing so that they can go back and find that information in the original article. There's a great variety in the way those citations are constructed. So there are individual slides that actually go through kind of the nuances for that construction. I'm not going to go through a lot of detail. They're not going to be included in this review. But when you actually begin doing your first APA formatted paper, I encourage you to go back to this PowerPoint or go back to this audio recording if you want to, just again to review the format that's required, because those in-text citations are pretty tough. There are actually multiple slides in the reference discussion also. And what I find the easiest is in the APA book, I'm going to say toward the front of the middle, if that makes any sense. It's like at the end of the first third of the book, there's a sample paper, and that is what I use to guide me with the references. On that sample paper in the APA book, it'll have the individual places where you can find all of this information in the book. So it's like tab 24-2, and you're able to find that very quickly in the book, and it'll give you kind of a textual description of what you're going to need. So utilize this as kind of the blueprint and go back and then use the textbook for additional information should you need it. So the title page is important. There's only really 3 components to the title page. The top is the header. Again, the header is in the left upper portion of it. You use header in your format. So when you set up the paper in the word processor, you're going to insert a header, and you do want that header that's on page 1 to be different from the header that's throughout the entire paper. On page 1, you're going to actually have the words running head, and the R in running is capitalized, the H in head is lowercase, and then you have a colon. And then follows the title of your paper. It's all capitalized, again, all in caps, and that starts on the left top of the paper. The right top of the paper, you have the number 1, which is the first page in this paper. And then in the middle portion of the page, you're going to have the title of the paper again. So on the first page of this APA formatted paper, the title appears twice. And that title may be multiple lines. It depends on how long it is. It's usually broken up so it truly is in the center of the paper if it is a longer title. Your name is going to follow next. It's just your first name, last name, and possibly a middle initial if you want it. You do not have any credentials or anything that follows that name. And then the third line in the title on the title page is the affiliated university. Again, it would say Widener University. Not the course, not the course number, no other information, just Widener University. The next page, page number 2, would be the abstract. And on page number 2, again, in the left upper part of the page, you're going to have that continuing running head. The words running head are no longer there. Again, they only appear on that title page, that first page. But throughout every single page now for the remainder of the paper is the title of the paper all capitalized. Top right of the abstract would be the number 2 because this is the second page, and then you'll have the heading centered. Again, it's a heading that is not bolded, it's just in regular type. And then you begin what's called the abstract, and an abstract is approximately 150 to 250 words, and it's a summary of the paper. Many people, many authors that I know, kind of end with the abstract. It's the last thing that's written, and it is completely a summary of the paper. You're going to see in some of the published research papers, the abstract has additional headings in it based on the parts of the research paper, again, methods, results, discussion, etc., with just a couple sentences to summarize what was found in each one of those. For the function of the paper that you're writing in class, the abstract is just a single paragraph that's an overview. And then immediately following the completion of the overview of this abstract, you're going to have the keywords that would be incorporated into the library kind of housing of the article so that when an individual searches, the author has identified what those keywords are that would pull up this article. The main body of the text then would begin with page 3. You're going to have the title all capitalized, again that running head, which will be the left upper side of the paper, and the number 3 on the right upper side. The title of the paper again is found, so here's another place that the title of the paper is in the running head, and again centered at the very start of the paper. It is not bolded, and these are common mistakes that students make. And then you begin in the body of your paper. You do not need the word introduction, but that first paragraph is going to be an introductory paragraph because that's how you start a paper. Again, an introduction kind of sets the playing field for the person who's reading the paper and really kind of sets the tone of the entire paper. And then you're going to move on. I do suggest the use of headings, and we'll talk about headings, but then your first heading would be there, and maybe that first heading is going to be whatever it is that you're going to be discussed. In order to be able to use headings, I strongly recommend that you do an outline of your paper, exactly what's going to be included in the outline. It's really good for 2 reasons. Number 1, it organizes you, the author, and it organizes the content for the individual that's reading it. Kind of gives people right up front an idea of where you're going with the content. This is the first of multiple slides, a total of 15 slides that deal with these in-text citations. Again, what belongs in a citation? It's the author's last name, comma, and the date of publication. Now, when there's multiple authors and other information that needs to be contained in the citations, there are differences, and that's why there's so many slides in this presentation. It shows you the individual different forms or formats of these in-text citations. So what I encourage you to do, again, is pull your references and begin looking at those references, and once you have the reference, you're going to be able to look back through this PowerPoint to pick out exactly what type of citation is going to be needed for this individual reference. 2 important kind of things to flag for you is, again, author's last name, comma, the date of publication, and then if it's a direct quote, if it's something that you're not able to paraphrase, you need to also include the page number. So what I'm going to do is go forward past all of these individual slides for the in-text citations. You're welcome to go back to the PowerPoint and look at those at your leisure when you're ready to do that, when you have pulled your references and are preparing the citations. And just as an FYI, this is slide number 24, and this is the final of the total of 15 slides that deal with the in-text citations. You can see how there's a subheading here to help you out. So this is a citation that was obtained from an electronic source, and there's a specific way to cite it because it is obviously from an electronic kind of materials, and they're unique. The next thing in the hit parade is how to use headings, and you can see that there are individual levels of headings. So a first level heading would be that first content area that you would come to. So if you make an outline, these first level headings are the Roman numerals so you're going to start with a big Roman numeral 1. The second level heading, again, would be the large letter A underneath that Roman numeral 1. Third level heading would be the number 1 underneath the large A under the Roman numeral, and so on. And you can see as you get to different levels of headings, they change in their format. Level 1 headings are bolded, number 1. They're centered, so they're in the middle of the paper, and they're both upper and lowercase letters. So the first letter of the word is uppercase, and then your lowercase from then on. And you can see how each of these are different. Obviously, in a dissertation, I had all 5 levels of APA headings because there's a lot of content, and you continue to organize the content in using these headings. Again, it's In APA format, it requires the use of headings, and that's what I'm telling you you need to be able to do. It may be in some of the papers that you submit. You don't have to put an abstract or use headings. This next slide is just an example. So here is the methods section of a draft paper, quote unquote, and you can see that there's a first level heading. That's the word methods. It's centered, it's bolded. And then there's the second level headings, which are site of the study and participants. A third level heading, so that's indented one. The second level headings are found on the left side, they're left justified, and then teachers and students, which is the third level heading, would be tabbed in 1. Results would be tabbed in 2, and then you can see the leveled headings that are level 4 are actually italicized. And the only thing that in a level 4, so teachers with experience, the with experience is all lowercase. So just use this. This is an excellent guide to the way to use headings. And again, why do I think that they're so important is because it organizes both you, the author, and the individual that's reading. They know exactly what to expect. The next part of this presentation deals with reference pages. Again, there are multiple pages in this. This is the overview of it. I encourage you as a student to, as soon as you begin collecting references, start a reference page. So for me, that's the first page that I begin when I write, and then I add to it as I go. In APA format, the reference pages are alphabetized, so it makes it a little bit easier. There's other forms of format where reference pages may be referenced or may be organized differently, and they're actually sequenced numerically based on how they appear in the paper. So it becomes really important to keep track of your references and make sure that you're giving credit for all of the information that you're including in your paper. APA for me is much easier because it's just alphabetized, and I don't actually have to keep track of their kind of order within the paper. Again, references differ, whether they come from a journal or a book, or the format is different. An electronic reference looks completely different. Utilize Nutsy Noble. There's examples of all three in Nutsy Noble. Utilize the APA book and that sample paper, and that's what I do. Is when I'm putting a reference in, for example, that has multiple authors or it's electronic or whatever, then I'm going to go to that sample paper just to ensure that I have it correct. Again, there's 2 additional slides underneath references to give you additional information that you'll be able to find on that PowerPoint presentation. So this is just the 4th of the slides that deals with reference listing, and it's kind of a summary, if you will. It encourages you also to go to identify what the form of the reference is and then to look to the APA format for additional information for how to actually include it. This PowerPoint presentation then includes a slide with what's important to utilize in tables. Again, tables would be a graphic presentation of textual information, a summary of information. So if you have 8 references that you use for your EBP paper, what are the characteristics of those 8 different references? You would put them into an individual table. If you compare that to a figure is something that is drawn, an illustration, a graphic representation, such as would be seen with the summary of your literature review. And then additional APA resources. This is just a slide that provides you the APA citation for the actual book itself. I apologize, I'm losing my focus here a little bit. You can see that it's all italicized, and that's actually not the correct format for a reference, so that's not what your reference is going to look like. The correct format for the 6th edition of the APA manual is found on the reference listing of the APA or of the Nutsy Noble template paper. Again, my expectation is any paper that you produce, you the student produce using APA format, is you're going to include the APA reference. You're using it, it needs to be referenced. And then there's a limited amount of additional information that's available on the APA website. What changes pretty frequently is the use of electronic sources or references. So when you're completing this paper, you can go to the APA website and check just to be certain that you have kind of the correct format. Real quick thank you from Widener to Purdue University for this wonderful product, and all of the individual designers of it and contributors are listed below in the summary or the presentation slides. And then this is the slide you live for, and that is another YouTube video is finished.